I was invited by Ubisoft to an exclusive demo event where they were showing the new parkour updates that you can now use in Assassin's Creed Shadows. They basically went through every update they've done to the parkour system and also spoke about potential future updates they're going to bring in later patches. In this video, I'm going to run through and show you with B-roll the new changes and improvements that they've made to the parkour system and explain why it is an improvement if you're not a parkour freak like 5 of us watching this video. But before I show you all the changes that have been implemented to the movement system, there's 2 things I want to discuss. The first thing is I want to commend Ubisoft for taking the community feedback so seriously. It's very important for the longevity of a game, especially for a franchise that reuses the same engine so often, to seriously look at what players are saying, the community feedback, and admitting when you're wrong. And this leads me to the second thing I want to discuss that I think you'll find really interesting, which was when we were on this call and they were about to show us all the changes they made, they upfront admitted that parkour wasn't a priority when designing this game. And the reasoning they give was particularly interesting because if you play the game, you'll see that parkour is not an important priority in their design. The reason why is because this game is set in Japan and the architecture doesn't really lend itself to extreme parkour like other vertical cities like Paris from Assassin's Creed Unity. But secondly, they were focused on providing a ninja assassin fantasy where stealth was the main value promise they gave to players, which meant that when they were designing Naoe's movement system, they weren't focused on making this flashy parkour that you could do for the sake of parkour, but rather a quick and efficient way for you to do stealth. If Naoe sees an enemy down on the ground, you want to basically give her the tools to go down as quickly as possible, kill the target, and then rise as quickly as possible. Parkour was designed with function in mind, with the idea of facilitating stealth to the player and providing that feeling of speed. They didn't really account for, in the game design, the idea that players wanted to just do parkour for its own sake, so they didn't really prioritize that. And through feedback and through community, vocalization, they realized that they were wrong, and they straight up admitted they were wrong. So I just want to commend that humility and also the action of going back and improving this parkour system to give players what they actually want. So let's go through the things that have already been implemented, the things that you can test right now, and some things that might come in the future I'll talk about later in the video. So the first improvement they made is the smallest one, but an extremely thoughtful one. They've created this sort of vertical jump that acts as a time saver. Whenever you, as Naoe or even Yasuke, go under a overhanging roof, you can now just press the parkour up button and Naoe will immediately jump up to it and go into a hanging state. That essentially saves you the worry or the time of having to do a wall run and always kind of run up the wall and then back into the overhanging roof. Now with this vertical jump, you just press it and you're in a hanging position and can immediately pull yourself up onto the roof. It's a good tool that improves the quality of life because when you're moving quickly, when you're sprinting as Naoe, from a very far distance you can create this vertical jump, which essentially does 2 things. 1, it maintains momentum, and 2, it reduces the distance you have to travel, the overall distance you have to travel in order to get onto a roof. So it's just a very, very small quality of life improvement that you might not think about actively when you're playing the game, but you'll notice that your momentum and the time you take to go from the street level to the roof is slightly shorter and much more natural. So that's a small but very thoughtful improvement that they made, which works pretty well throughout the entire world. And now we get into the juicy stuff. You've probably already seen through a video from Rapatopoulos or someone else that they have already made parkour height maintaining ejects, which basically means when you do a side eject or a back eject, Naoe will maintain her height. Before, when you did it, it either wouldn't work or she would descend to something lower like the ground. In this update that came before, she basically maintained the height, and now what players really want is height gaining ejects. Bear in mind these are still contextual, so it means that depending on how far Naoe is from a certain object that she can grab, where it is and how it's positioned, Naoe will rise to a different height or not rise at all. But it does mean that essentially whenever you're on a building and there's something you can side eject to, you can now raise your height in parkour and go up through a back eject or go up through a side eject. You can see here in the footage how good it looks, and this, I promise you, again, really improves the flow of parkour and improves the self-expression you can have with Naoe because you can rise to a rooftop using different directions. So it's not just going up a wall and climbing directly on a wall. You can go up in a wall and then go back. You can travel through the 3 dimensions. You can basically exploit the width, the length, and the depth. And it's just, I think, a very crucial part of any parkour system that any game with decent parkour should have. Now, one thing that I did ask when they were doing this demo, because I'm a parkour freak, is if you could do non-contextual ejects. Basically, what that means is if I'm hanging on a wall and there's nothing that I can immediately automatically attach to, can I still perform that eject? Can I, for example, eject onto my death? If I'm hanging at the top of a castle and there's nothing to eject to, can I still press eject and now it just jumps to her death? And that's just a choice that I make. The reason why I want to do this is because it opens up the architecture for you to decide when and where you want to eject even if there's nothing to grab, and then you match that with a catch ledge button, and it basically opens up the world and allows you to dictate how you move around the world. And the short answer is no. The short answer is you can do that up to 10 meters. So up to 10 meters, you can climb any surface and then eject, and now it will basically eject regardless of whether she can catch onto something or not. But beyond 10 meters, now it'll just not jump, and that's just some railings that they put in thinking that players wanted more safety and to be guided more, and they're slowly realizing, and they talked to me about this and they admitted it, that players want more agency, even if it means creating their own mistakes. As long as the mistakes feel fair, players do want the ability to basically kill themselves with Naue or jump to their deaths, or, you know, create their own parkour movements without context. And they did say, and when I say this, I need to be very clear that this is not a guaranteed implementation they're going to have, and they asked me to specify that because, again, this is one parkour update for a game that has many different features, and the Ubisoft Quebec team, like any team in any project, has limited resources and limited time. So even though they do want to include no context ejects and catch ledge and all these improvements that aren't coming in this update, there's no guarantee that they will. They're aware of it, they're trying to implement it, but there's no guarantee, and it's very important to say that. And the side ejects are also going to function the same way, which is that up to 10 meters you can side eject. Depending on the context, you can side eject upwards, and now it will land on her feet or maybe on her hands, but they work perfectly. Non-context side ejects might be coming, not confirmed. And that's basically when I started interrogating them about what parkour updates could come in the future. The things I asked for and that they are trying to implement, and maybe they might, is one, catch ledge, which is going to be directional. They won't have an animation paired for it, but it will be a directional catch ledge. So if they do have the time and resources to implement this, that would be great, because it pairs very beautifully with non-context dependent ejects. So I can just jump to my death and then catch a building and not die in the first place. Other things that I know the community wants that I made them aware of is diagonal runs. So when you're going up a wall, you can do a diagonal wall run, and also swinging. So creating some sort of pole system where when you're doing parkour, you grab onto a pole, swing, and then go onto another beam or another roof. These are small changes that they might want to make. But even if they don't, the most important thing about this is that they're aware that players want better parkour. And even more importantly, this is something they spoke about, which I found really interesting, was moving forward, all the Assassin's Creed games are going to be using this rendition of the engine. This rendition of the engine for AC Shadows is different from the one that they used for Valhalla. So they couldn't really copy and paste all the parkour elements from, for example, Mirage or Valhalla onto AC Shadows, but every Ubisoft studio is going to be using this engine for AC, which means all the parkour improvements that exist in AC Shadows are going to be immediately ported over to other Assassin's Creed games. Now, they also made very clear that those studios can choose to keep those improvements or not. For example, Ubisoft Montreal is currently making Assassin's Creed Hexe, which is going to be a much more linear, horror-based Assassin's Creed game that's much more experimental and definitely not an RPG. So all these parkour improvements that are available in Assassin's Creed Shadows are available to use in Assassin's Creed Hexe, but there's no guarantee they'll use it because maybe it doesn't match their world, it doesn't match their style, or they just want to use a completely different system. Point being that the issue we had with Assassin's Creed Mirage, where all the improvements Assassin's Creed Mirage made were lost in Assassin's Creed Shadows, is not going to happen again unless it's by choice. So if there's a creative choice to leave these parkour movements out, they will be left out, and if not, it's possible to port them over. An example they used about this creative choice, and sometimes that being a mistake, is Ubisoft Quebec choosing to leave hoods out of cutscenes. This is something that from early on in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, AC Origins, there were hoods in cutscenes, and in Mirage as well. And the creative director of Assassin's Creed Shadows thought that it was a better idea to take the hoods out of the cutscenes, and they now realize that that was a mistake. So again, love the transparency from Ubisoft, love the updates that they have given us. Fingers crossed that they can give the updates in the future, but again, I'm kind of responsible to say that it's not guaranteed these future improvements will come. But I hope you enjoy the ones that currently exist, which are the back ejects and the vertical jump. And if you have any future parkour updates that you would want, please do leave it in the comments, because it's been very clear that the Ubisoft community team does read the comments from Assassin's Creed YouTube videos, whether it's me or Rapatopoulos or the Hidden One or Master Assassin, they are reading this. So thank you to all the people who do care, thank you for all the people who do watch, and if you want a parkour improvement for Assassin's Creed Shadows, let your voice be known, because you are being heard. If you want to watch a video about my overall thoughts of Assassin's Creed Shadows, you can watch this video now.